I'm Weldon Williford with eXp Realty, and this is the October monthly market update. The average time to sell a home doubles from 2024. The weakness in the Wayne County housing market continues into the September data. It now takes twice as long to sell a home as it did at the same time last year. While technically we are still within historical averages for time on market data, which generally is, has been under 90 days, but of course this takes into account pre-computer and internet era. So I do think times have, gone down due to technology. We are still, within a healthy market range, although we are trending much higher. The average sales price also declined by 5% year over year, which is a substantial drop. This was caused mainly, there was no houses that were sold over the $600,000 price range in September, with the bulk of the homes being between $250,000 and $300,000. So I think that contributed somewhat to the reduced sales prices, but like I said, they are down year over year. There was a slight increase in mortgage rates throughout September, which most likely contributed to the market weakness. However, the rates do seem to be coming back down slowly. There's been some weak job market data that started coming out prior to the government shutdown, and I think once that data does start coming back out, we may see some further acceleration to the downside on the interest rates. Let me pull up the today's rates. I can go ahead and show that to you. As of today, your 30-year FHA loan is at these, and of course these are averages. Depending on the lender, might be able to do a little bit better. It's 6.03% for VA. For FHA, and 6.04 for VA, and 30-year fixed 6.32%. Like I said, mortgage rates, they do have a drastic effect on the Wayne County market. Back when rates jumped over 7%, the average sold home price fell by almost $40,000 back in February just of this year alone. So, 1% difference makes a huge difference in the sales prices in this area. So I do think if we can get it back under that 6% threshold, that I do think we will see home prices pick back up. Now, there does seem to be a little bit more activity than usual in the past 2 weeks among the realtor community. Since the market has been so slow overall, like any news of increased buyers and sellers travels pretty fast. I know my business has started to pick up some, and others that I know have as well. Whether this surge, leads into, increased prices or shorter days on market for home sellers is up in the air. I do believe if mortgage rates, like I said earlier, if they can fall below that 6% threshold, that will spur some more buyers to get out and purchase a home, especially, new construction, which really has some incredible deals right now, like all closing costs paid. There's interest rate buy down deals available in many neighborhoods. And, like I said, in the rates, if they get below that 6% mark and stay below there, I do think it will help stabilize home prices as well, barring any, economic uncertainty or, any unexpected higher unemployment. And other market data pretty much remains largely unchanged from last month, which, last month was kind of a shock. We were not expecting to see such a huge drop for August, because typically August is a pretty hot month. But pretty much the majority of data, I'm going to get ready to go over that with you here in just a minute. Pretty much is unchanged. Total home listings are approximately the same. Percentage of sale to list price ratio is still hanging around that 96%. So sellers generally are having to either come off about 4% on sales price, or generally around 4% in seller concessions when they list a home. So, it's kind of like I said, not really a buyer's market, but like I said, it's a very balanced market right now. Um, and like I said, in the total sales volume is also flat from the low levels from last month, and the kind of low levels that we've seen all year. So let me get here, and I'll pull up some data here, and I'm going to show you the list prices. You can see that the sold, this blue line here is your sold average price, and really since May we have trended down. There is some data here where it's trending up. Like I said, I don't know how long it's gonna last. Inflation is pushing prices up. We've kind of got this tug of war going on, and the stock market is kind of experiencing the same issues where we've got some economic decline, but at the same time we've got a decline in the dollar and causing some inflation, which is keeping prices up. And like I said, eventually one side is going to win out, depending on what happens with economic activity. Listing prices, I really think this is mainly being driven by new construction, because generally, in historical terms, and throughout the country, about 1 out of every 20 houses was new construction. And as of right now, throughout the United States, 1 out of every 3 homes being sold is currently new construction, which is highly unusual. Again, I've covered this on many market reports before. The reason for that mainly is because people refinance their homes, and I know. As a matter of fact, I have several friends that have 2.75% mortgage rates, and they're never going to sell their house unless they're just forced to move. And I think the majority of the people are in that same situation. So there's just not much resale inventory available to purchase. So the builders have been picking up the slack. Like I said, lots of new neighborhoods, lots of new construction. And so I think that's what's driving these list prices higher, because materials, with inflation, pushes materials, and the builders can only sell a house, but so cheap when it comes to a certain point. If there's not enough profit, they simply won't build a house. Let me go to the next slide. I wanted to show you the average solds here, and that, like I said, from 2024, you can see this average sale price was 289, almost 290. And then here in September of this year, 275. And again, that's you can see that 5% change year over year. Now that actually has improved from earlier this year. It was actually much worse. So there is some improvement there. However, you can see the absorption rate has gone from 3 months to 4 months. Again, that's how much inventory there is. Generally, like I said, a healthy market is 6 months or less on the absorption rate. So like I said, we're still pretty healthy as far as amount of sellers to buyers, amount of inventory. But that was a 25% jump year over year. So that is still quite an increase. Like I said, we were coming from a very, very low level of inventory. So some of that is expected. However, again, that's something to monitor over the coming months to see what that number does. If we stabilize out around this 4 month level, then we should be okay. But the big number and the big shocker, year over year was, pretty much a perfect double. 2024 to 2025, cumulative days on market, average cumulative days on market went from 36 to 72 days. And that is a huge jump in 1 year. And so, even the median, more than doubled. So 187% increase. So like I said, those are some concerning numbers and things we definitely need to watch for. So like I said, to see if it stabilizes. Like I said, Historically, we always would say 90 days for Wayne County, but again, that's including early internet days, pre modern technology days, where everybody knows that a home is that a home is on the market pretty much immediately. Whereas before it might would take a week or two to get that information out to people. So probably 14 days. We've definitely sped that up by at least 2 weeks, I would think, as far as marketing of homes. And let's go over the like I said, the other data generally has stayed about the same. Median sales price went up just a little bit. The big one again is this here average days on market. That was the big thing for this month. Sold to list ratio was flat from last month. New listings went down. Again, that's not really a huge thing. We're coming into September, October, November, into the winter months. You don't see quite as much movement. Like I said, a lot of people like to sell their homes when school is out in the summertime. So historically, you start seeing a drop off in listings. However, what's concerning is even though we had a drop in new listings, we actually went up in total listings by, I think we had 399 last month, not by much. But again, it was, like I said, it was pretty flat. Most of the data was flat. And then, like I said, the number of sold listings actually did go up just a little bit. Again, pretty flat. I think it was like 102, 103 last month. So, like I said, the data has just kind of been, it's not been great. Like I said, we're not seeing much. The only hope that we had, again, was from earlier is, is watching these sold, the median sold and the pending median and the increase in list. If you're a seller and you're wanting to push prices higher, you want to get more equity out of your house, really want to see this part to keep trending higher. However, like I said, we are going into the slower months of the year, so it's as you can see over here, things start really dropping off, late in the year. So we'll have to see if we get that same drop off. As long as the mortgage rates, again, like I said earlier, if the mortgage rates will, stay down and come down even lower, there's a good possibility this trend could continue. So basically, in a nutshell, the market is still fairly healthy, albeit a little weak. There are great deals for home buyers and new construction. There's more inventory to choose from on the resale market as well. Buyers aren't as much at risk of being outbid from other buyers if they act swiftly, on a property that they like. Go ahead and get that offer in if you see one you like, and you got a good shot at getting it. Home sellers just have to be aware of the market conditions, when they're pricing their homes. I typically, when I do a market analysis, I give the seller a range, and I'll give you my suggested value. And like I said, it really just depends on your time constraints, where you want to choose to list in that range. That's an important consideration, because in a softer market that we're having to navigate, it does make a difference. Where price is what sells. It's really truly what sells the home. Realtors, we like to think our great marketing, our pictures and our videos, but in reality is it's what the market will bear. And I've told that with several. I always tell that to my seller clients. The buyers really, or what the buyer tells you, essentially the market will tell you what that house is worth. And I like to judge that based on the amount of showing activity, number of phone calls. I know generally what a healthy number of phone calls are per week, or a healthy number of showings. And like I said, the market will tell you whether your house is priced in the right range or not. But if you're looking for an agent that gives fair rates, intelligent advice, or hard for you to meet your goals, give me a call for a free consultation. I'll be glad to help, whether you're looking to buy or sell a home in the near future. Have a great day.